if you really, really want something, you'll find a way to get it. If you're really passionate about something and you do, have that dream, just don't give up on it because you will find a pathway to get there.
Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios videocast, a videocast where we sit down with creatives and hear their story. Today, we are joined by Joel Smith. Joel, thanks for coming today.
Hello, Nathan. Great to be here.
Joel, tell us your story.
Well, my name is Joel Smith. I am a social media and digital consultant who currently runs his own business. Well, at least trying to, considering the global pandemic we're currently in. But I've been in, digital and social media for about 8 years now. Initially working for some big clients, some not-for-profits, some sporting organisations. Then headed overseas, tried to make it over there in a freelance kind of capacity, and then returned to Australia, and here I am today. So trying to make it on my own, using my experience that I've gained, and just using contacts that I've made throughout the years, and see what can happen, I guess.
Great. So that's who you are today. How did you start your journey in social media and digital creation?
Yeah. So, if you want to start back at the start, it was coming out of school. I was always passionate about sports, I guess, and not really knowing what I wanted to do, like most people, I guess. And I thought, well, I was always interested in kind of writing and reporting and journalism down that path, and so put those two things together. I thought, like a lot of people my age and interested in sports, wanted to be a sports reporter, and there I was, ending up at Monash University doing journalism and trying to find my way and trying to work out exactly what I wanted to be doing. And so from there I graduated as a journalist, and at that time it was very competitive degree. There was lots of students vying for the very limited positions in the big newspapers such as Herald Sun or The Age, in terms of a cadetship, and it was going to be hard going, I think, and so I kind of had to make my own path, and a blessing in disguise, I guess. I did I had a major in marketing at the same time, so that kind of opened up my windows a bit more, and fell into a media agency, which, I mean, at that point I really didn't know what a media agency did. And
so what year was this?
Yeah, so this year was graduated in 2010, so it was a 3-year journalism degree, and it took me about 6 months, I reckon, to first find a job, or my first full-time job, and that was purely through me, not having any experience under my belt at that stage, like most grads, going through uni lecturers and just kind of knocking on their door and saying, "Have you got any leads that I could apply for?" And that came to a head, and I'm glad that I did that. I was proactive in that way. Otherwise, who knows what my path would have looked like now. So ended up at this media agency through a connection of a lecturer, and then discovered what that was, and quickly found out that working for an agency was really hard work, but also you got to party hard. So kind of balanced out in that respect.
Keep going. Keep telling us this story as you were progressing from the media agency onto the next stage of life.
The next thing. So I guess from there that was around, like I said, 2011, in terms of when I was more experienced in that media agency position, and at that time coincided with, I guess, the rise of this digital medium that became social media, or the trend that was happening at the time. And not many people, I guess, people knew about digital. Like, we were advertising digitally from this media agency who were known as a traditional media advertisers, so radio, print, TV, but digital was a component at that stage, but not as big. So spend from big clients weren't prioritizing digital as much.
And why do you think that was? Because it was so new?
Yeah. So not many. It was new. It wasn't brand new, but it was new to a point where I guess big corporates didn't know the result of what digital advertising could be. So they just kind of stick to what they knew, and they knew that TV would get you so many eyeballs, and radio would get you so many readership and that sort of thing. So I guess there was no trust yet in digital. The results kind of were speaking for themselves, but it was too early to say if it was a shoo-in, that it was an optimal pathway, I guess, of advertising. So it was fresh, it was exciting, but at the same time, moving away from advertising, social media was coming in to a point where it was this exciting. It was this complete new. Well, I guess it'd been around a couple of years by 2011, but it was
in its infancy at that stage. It hadn't matured to what we know it as today.
Exactly.
How long do you think it took from it in its infancy to really start to get credibility with people to go, oh, actually, instead of spending $100,000 on this billboard, I'm going to spend $100,000 on Facebook and then what kind of results would they get?
Yeah, well, that was interesting because I'd never. I was still within the media agency. I was still on the traditional side. I wasn't in the digital team, so I didn't really. Yeah, for me, I really couldn't give you an honest answer to that. My pathway into social media was more the content side, not necessarily the advertising side. I've delved into a bit of it now because I guess that shift has definitely happened. And more people are throwing advertising dollars at digital and social. So to answer your question, potentially in the last 4 or 5 years, that shift has happened. But from my point of things, the production side is in terms of content is where I headed, and I guess that's a good segue to go back to where my next position was in terms of. After the agency, where I realised that social media was becoming a thing, and if I from a guy not knowing really what he wanted to do, was maybe this was the sliding doors moment that I could really latch onto, and I actually got headhunted by the Salvation Army, who I was sitting on their youth advisory media and marketing board. As a not-for-profit, obviously they latched out to different people from different organisations to sit on their different boards, and I was a member from the agency, and then they actually got in touch with me to kind of poach me as their first social media community coordinator. So that was a really interesting experience. The reason why it was a new role is because they actually had a public relations crisis that meant that they needed someone in terms of, I guess, a resource to man their communication channels in terms of social, that could actually be a voice for the brand and kind of stand up for the organisation, because they were getting quite slammed at the time due to this PR stuff up that they had. So it was an interesting time, but
So was that more just communicating with people one-on-one, or was that also creating content to then put out on social channels to kind of maybe change the narrative of what people are perceiving?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely a bit of both. So because it was a new role, I guess they didn't really know what they were looking for. It was kind of a blank canvas for me to come in and just do whatever. And for me, I mean, with not much experience in that field, I was an open book as well. So at the end of the day, as long as I, from a community management point of view, as long as the Salvos were trying to get out there and rectify the situation, in terms of, representing who they were and making sure the right messages were getting out there. It also was a role that developed into, more a marketing content role, which I worked with different teams to, work through different campaigns and, just get the Salvos in terms of their name and their position out there, showcasing the work that they do and, trying to raise money for their Red Shield appeal and that sort of thing. So, it was more than just trying to save face, if so to speak, but it was definitely a balancing act between the two.
So in that role there, were you finding yourself creating the content that you were putting out, or were you managing people and collaborating with people? Talk us through that.
The Salvos, why you'd think of them as quite a big organisation in terms of, I guess, financial resources. They're a not-for-profit, so they can't rely on similar resources that a big corporate would have. So it was a bit of, do-it-yourself kind of thing. The media team did have like a graphic designer, a web marketing person, a media kind of relations person, but when it came to social, I guess I could rely on a few, the graphic designer for some help or that sort of thing, but it was very make it up as you go, and obviously with the nature of social media, it's fast.
Yeah.
You got to, if you've only got a certain window of opportunity to make it count. So when you needed something, you had to do it yourself, and
So obviously you've got a graphic design background, you've got a video producing background, you've got audio engineer background, all those things. I'm sure you've got all that experience. How did you make all that stuff really quickly and to a high standard?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely no video producer like you,
really?
Nathan.
Okay. Graphic design, though, you must know everything about graphic design, right?
I wish.
Right.
I mean,
so talk us through that. So you don't have a lot of experience with graphic design and all that kind of stuff that you would traditionally think, you need to have these skills to be successful at all with social media. How did you get through that? What was your process?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think a lot of people that work in social media could say the same thing, that you just expected to know. So if you're working content and you don't have those resources, then how does the content get out there? Well, it's you or nothing. So how did that come to be? Well, I think you just learn. Like you're forced to just learn. Fortunately now, there's some great programs out there that makes it easy for you to learn. One that comes to mind is Canva for
that's what I was thinking
for graphic design. I mean, I tried Photoshop. I can use it to a limited scale, but
it's a time drain.
Yeah. Thank God for Canva. That is so much more easy and more functional to use. So it's just about having the willingness to learn. Thank God for YouTube too. There's so many great resources on YouTube that I've learned so much through. Just if you don't know an answer to something, just YouTube it, and someone's made a video on it. So it's having the willingness, but also knowing the right resources to go to. So
Great.
Thankful for that.
So you figured out the resources. If you were doing stuff today, you'd use Canva, and if you need to answer a question and learn how to do something, you just go to YouTube, type it in. So you can figure out how to make stuff. But what do you make? Like, what is content that works, or at least worked back then, that you could share with us? Some of the strategies that you used. Did you just throw up some text and say, ask a question to people, or did you post a picture, or was video was video actually really engaging, or did you find that photos were actually more engaging, or did things just change every single day that you were like, well, I don't even know what works anymore. Let's just throw something at the wall and see what sticks. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so back at the Salvos, I guess, we're going back.
And what year was Salvos?
Yeah, so this is 2012, 2014 now, so 2 years there. So if we're talking back then, it's times have changed and things are very drastically different now. And I guess that's the nature of social. It just moves so quickly. So for anyone working in it, you just have to be on top of the trends, and to be successful in it, you kind of need to be ahead of the trend. So always learning from that perspective. But yeah, if you're talking back then, what would work is obviously different to what would work now. So the basic functionality of social back then, I guess, was Instagram was just kind of starting out. So you put up a good kind of emotional picture, and that would work compared to now. You'd put up a 20-second video, and that would work. So it has changed drastically. But yeah, another thing about the industry that I work in is nothing's hard and fast. Like, it's not accounting. It's not 2 times 2 is 4. There's no exact answer. There's no black and white. It's just about testing. And if one thing doesn't work, then try another thing and see how that goes. So I guess you get to learn your audience and what they're responding to. I mean, your audience may be different to what your audience is, or my audience may be different to what your audience is. So if one thing doesn't work, then just park that and try something else.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Everyone's audience is different. So me putting up a cute picture of a dog on my Instagram account for video production might not really hit home with my audience. Working at the Salvos, knowing who your audience was, are there any posts or content that you created that really stands out, that you're like, that hit home, that exceeded expectations?
Yeah, this is going back a long while, so my memory kind of doesn't do me any justice. But one campaign that sticks out was we did a Salvos coffee chat, which was all around Youth Homelessness Week, and it was the messaging behind that was basically ask someone for a coffee. Go out and have a chat with them, and who knows what you might find out. If they're struggling at home, then they don't have a home. They just need someone to talk to, and kind of it's all about that kind of are you okay day, like checking in on people and just being there for them. So we kind of did this campaign around taking someone out for a coffee and just making sure they're okay. And that was fun because that was led by social only. So it was different graphic designs. It was different photos that we got from photo shoots. We did some video content and just put it out on our social channels. So that was good to be a part of, because I guess like I said, it was social only. So if that component wasn't working, then it wasn't going to be a success. So, that was good. But then I guess coming back to what I was originally employed for in terms of the community coordinator aspect to the role, it was it was responding to people in a way that put the Salvos in a position of a positive light. So, that was just about putting my PR hat on and making sure that was all in good fit. So
yeah, I'm sure you learnt a lot during your 2 years there at the Salvos as well. So then moving on from Salvos, where did you go on from there?
Yeah, so when I realised, I obviously gained a lot of experience at the Salvos, which I'm very grateful for, and not having the resources that I now know existed, obviously taught me a lot and taught me a bit of everything. So I was very appreciative of that, but I knew, I definitely now, I said at the beginning, like my passion was always sport. So I obviously, that's the path or the industry that I eventually wanted to get into. So I was kind of looking around and shopping around and seeing what was out there. And I'd always worked at Tennis Australia in terms of a statistic or a retail. This is going a long way back now, but capacity at the Australian Open. So I had a few leads in there, and when I saw that they're advertising for a social media position, I obviously leapt at the opportunity and thought potentially I could use or lean on my previous Australian Open experience to say that I've got great tennis knowledge and I'm familiar with the surroundings and stuff. And now that I've garnered this social media experience, well, marry those two things up together and who knows what could happen. So, I applied for that position and luckily I was fortunate enough to get it. And
Also, no luck, all skill.
well, I hope so. But it was I got the position and was there for about 3 years. So and that was before I made the move to London.
So just before we go to London, highlights working at Tennis Australia. What can you share with us?
Yeah, so many highlights. Obviously, it was a dream job. It was, if there is such a thing that exists, dream job. It was working in tennis. It was working in sport. It was working in social media. And at that point in my career, I thought, that was the bee's knees. And, especially when it came around to the summer of tennis, as they call, where, the tournaments happen in the lead up to the Australian Open. It's obviously a Grand Slam event. It's it's on the world stage. And you are, tweeting from the account that the world is watching for 2 weeks. That's pretty cool to say that you're manning those accounts. So, just the hype around that, the event itself. To say that you are part of the digital team at the Australian Open is definitely a highlight. A lot of people say, what do you do for the rest of the 10 other months of the year? And it's a fair question, but at the same time, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. To pull off an event of that scale to any degree, especially, from where I come from in terms of digital, that's a lot of pressure. So you need a lot of planning time, and there's a lot that goes into it in the few months beforehand, as well as, we're working for Tennis Australia. It's not just about the events, but it's about growing the game of tennis at the grassroots level. It's about, following the Australian players and kind of growing their brand. It's about, getting the sport of tennis or the name of tennis out there and, really developing that interest throughout the country. So, there's a lot to do. And, just to be around those big name Australian players or, to interview some global players when they came out, that definitely some highlights. So,
who was your favourite to interview? Just name drop, shamelessly name drop.
There's a few. Rafa Nadal, you can't. He's such a lovely guy, and I was out. I think it was a couple of years ago. I was outside waiting for him at the Sydney airport, and just got the call up to say Rafa Nadal's coming. No one else knows. You guys are going out there. Can you just ask him a few questions? And I was like, okay, sure. So went out to the airport, and he's obviously doesn't know that there's going to be someone there to interview him when he lands on the ground, and he just had so much time for us. He's like, no worries, just I'll give you a few questions, and just such a lovely guy, and his demeanor, and obviously a great player on the court too. So he's a good one.
Yeah, great. You mentioned before tweeting, which then made me think, it's not just Facebook, it's not just Instagram, there's also Twitter. What's your favorite social media platform before we move on to finding out about your adventures in London?
Favorite. I think it's definitely changed over time. If you're asking me now, it's also comes down to whether you're asking for my personal use or for
let's say personal. Well, let's do business first.
Yeah.
And then personal.
From a business perspective, I would say Instagram. I think that's the most engaging in terms of results. It's the most engaging channel. So if you're interested in data and you're looking at analytics, then Instagram is usually what gets those numbers in the green. So I think from my experience, I think Instagram's the channel that is, the most worthy. In saying that, obviously TikTok's become the new trend, especially of 2020, going back last year. So yeah, in terms of my career, I haven't yet ventured into TikTok, so I can't really. I mean, no one's asked me to. I can't really speak for that, but I think that would be also the most rewarding in terms of the numbers that TikTok gets and the scalability that it gets for brands that I've seen in terms of case studies. So, but from a business point of view, it's funny, like you use social media on a daily, if not hourly level, when it comes to your work, but I hardly use it from a personal point of view now. So, read into that what you will, but in terms of personal, I probably use Twitter the most, to be honest. I think that's where I get my most. It's probably where I find or get the most out of it, I think, in terms of news or trends or just to see what people are doing from a work point of view or news point of view. But yeah, I don't really use the others at all.
Yeah. Every social platform has their pros and cons. You didn't mention Facebook really at all. Why is that?
Yeah, Facebook. Yeah, no, it's a good question. Facebook is really, obviously it was the original. It was, it started.
It was MySpace.
Well, if you want to go back that far.
Yeah.
But I guess out of the current ones, Facebook was the initial platform that people, saw an opportunity for. So, especially from a business point of view. But it's just changed. It's changed so much, like compared to what it used to be.
So what's changed other than our parents are now on it?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Yeah, I guess Facebook it's become how do you say it? It's become too big for its boots, I think. Like from what it used to be, from what it was originally created for, it's now not. So I don't know if you remember, but when I first made a Facebook account, it was probably 2009. It was to see what my friends were doing. It was to see in events that were happening. It was occasionally you found some stupid content that you could engage with, but now it's memes. But now it's just become an advertising board, and there's a lot of, if you're flicking through your newsfeed, there's a lot of is this a family friendly show?
Yeah, very family friendly.
So there's a lot of crap that you have to filter through to get what you want. So yeah, definitely. Ever since Facebook has seen the opportunity to monetize its platform, it's changed, and now using it in that capacity from an advertiser's point of view, that also continually changes with privacy laws and different variables that happen that they're not very transparent with. So it's a frustrating platform to use from a both a business point of view and a personal point of view. So I think it's for what it was. It's definitely changed a lot, and it's frustrating to use.
So for our audience, if they're a business owner, your recommendation would be to jump if you had to pick one platform, you'd jump all in on Instagram and you wouldn't really pay attention to Facebook. Is that a hard and fast rule, or are there lots of variables? Or maybe Facebook does work for certain businesses, but then works for other businesses on Instagram, or actually no, just goes to TikTok. I mean, that's where it's at. What would be your advice to our audience if they were a small business owner and they really wanted to harness the power of social media? Yeah,
like I said before, what works for my audience may not work for your audience, and that comes with platforms as well. So, if you're for example, if you're a cafe owner and you've got these amazing images of coffee, obviously Instagram is going to be your friend. But if you're, I'm trying to use Facebook as an example, but if you're a B2B business owner that you're selling services to other businesses, then LinkedIn's going to be.
I was going to say, we haven't even touched on LinkedIn. Oh my goodness.
So, the platforms work in for different reasons. And I guess you just, you need to work out what your product or service is, what your offering is, and marry that up with what the platform can do. So, in terms of Facebook specifically, like the businesses I work for, I'm still on Facebook with. I think.
And is that just because that's how we've always done it?
Yeah, I mean, they still own in terms of users, they still own the majority of them. So there probably is a big market out there that you're missing out on if you're not on Facebook. So therefore, there's no cost to you to be on it anyway. In terms of an advertising point of view, you need a presence on Facebook to advertise on Facebook. So therefore, naturally you'd have a presence there anyway. So yeah, I'm not really selling in terms of having a Facebook presence, but I'd still have one just because, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's fine. So before we move on to London, I think I've already said this, but one more question. For, say, content creators and business owners, whoever wants to really get into social media, if they can't be on every platform, how many platforms would you suggest? Like just one, go all in on one, or should you spread yourself across a couple of platforms? And after you've answered that question, I've got one more follow-up for that.
Yeah. From my experience, social media it should be about quality, not quantity. So it's about doing things well in terms of just doing something on everything, especially now with, the many functionalities of each platform. I read something on Twitter the other day that, someone that says just get something out on social media. If that was the case, then you'd have to make a certain piece of content about 8 different versions. So it's really, in terms of how many platforms should you be on? Well, like I said before, it's about knowing your audience and knowing your offering and who, where that audience lives. Because if you're just throwing stuff out for the sake of it, then it's not going to end well for you. You need to be really considering your objectives, and having that high quality of content to really make it work. So in terms of, there's no hard and fast rule about how many platforms you should be on, but always prioritize the ones that you should be on in terms of your audience, and really make it, put time and effort into it before, looking at other ones that you should expect, that you might want to expand into. So, definitely don't say I need to be on all of them, because you don't.
Yeah, that's good. And the follow-up question is, what is your opinion on social media schedulers, where you can post the same content from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to, I doubt, TikTok or whatever? Wow, that's so convenient. Wow, that's cutting down. Like, I don't have to log on to each platform and post individually. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's another interesting one. Yeah, I can see why people do it, because at the same time, it's
so easy.
It's convenient.
So convenient. Why not? I can't see a downside to this. What are the downsides to that? Because I've got a few.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you do. No, the downsides are definitely, I mean, if you've got the same audience on all those platforms, then obviously they're going to see right through that. And, and I guess it tarnishes your brand in terms of the fact that you haven't really cared like you should, and give it, put time and effort into the different platforms. So obviously you can have the same content but vary it up in terms of each platform, and each platform serves a different functionality as well. So what might work if you've got one piece of content, what might work on Facebook, you may have to tweak to work on Twitter, or may have to tweak to work on Instagram. So it's a contentious topic. It's for time and convenience, it's, social media managers, I guess you could group them as, are very limited for time. So I can see why they would do that. But at the same time, your audience are smarter than you think. And for example, a 16 by 9 video on YouTube, you're not going to get the same effect on Instagram that should be, a 4:5. So in terms of aspect ratio. So you got to.
And why would you do 4:5?
So 4:5 in recent times has been proven. The data says that that square or that elongated square works well for a platform like Instagram because it's mobile based. So you really have to adapt to your audience and how they're consuming it. So obviously Instagram being a mobile only. I mean, you can look at it on desktop, but the majority
Who does?
Yeah, exactly. It was originally built for mobile only, and therefore, in terms of our mobiles, they're portrait. So you gotta build for that, I guess. So
And one other frustrating thing that I see when I see double up posts, so like from Facebook to Instagram, is on Facebook you can post a web link and you can click on it, and that's fine. On Instagram, you can't click on it. And every time I see a brand that posts a link to something, I think, do you even use this platform? Like straight away, I'm just like, keep scrolling, maybe even unfollow or whatever, because clearly they don't understand how to use that platform. So it's really important if you're using a platform to communicate to your audience that you know how to use it and know what to post and what not to post. So are there any other little tidbits like that you see brands doing that you're like, stop that?
In terms of specific examples, I'd probably have to come back to you. But that obviously no link in Instagram posts is a big one. But like I said, it's about using the full functionality of that specific platform. So, one piece of content scheduled out to all 4 or 5 platforms is not optimal in terms of performance. Depending on what platform that is. So, knowing the platform before you're posting is very, very crucial.
And then when you post something, are you on that platform engaging with people that are engaging with your posts, or do you just kind of set and forget it?
Well, it depends how much time I have, Nathan. So
on an average day, like what would be your number one priority? Like, would you sit and engage, or would you just post it and then on to the next task, create the next post, think about the next big idea?
I think it comes down to your audience size and what's feasible. So for a small client like one of my small clients is La Cabra, a Mexican restaurant in Hawthorne, and they've got up to 1,000 on Facebook and almost 2,000 on Instagram, and I feel like I do have enough time to manage that community. But for the Australian Open, for example, there's 2 million plus on Facebook and 2.5 on Twitter or whatever the numbers are now, where it's not possible. So I guess ideally when a organization becomes that big, you've got a team for that. I know a lot of big corporations now with those sort of audience sizes have customer service positions that look after where social has become part of their gamut, which is very helpful to the actual content creators who can just focus on making content and doing that really well. So I think it comes down to your audience size. Ideally, social media is a two-way platform, two-way community. It's not, as a consumer of it, why are you asking me to engage if you're not going to engage back as a brand? So I've always been a big believer of it, and I think the brands that do it well do interact with their community, but at the same time it comes down to your time and resources. So you got to weigh that up. But ideally, you'd be not just shooting out one-way messages to your audience and expecting them to interact when you're not going to interact back. So
yeah, that's a good point. So for small businesses, if they're got somewhat small following, so what would you consider a small following, like 1,000 or less, or?
yeah, probably.
Yep. So
up to 5,000 probably is a
Yep.
small. Yeah.
So they should try and prioritize engaging with their community.
Yeah.
Because social media is a dialogue; it's not just a monologue.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, so now let's move on to London. Tell us about London.
Yeah, so I had my dream job at Tennis Australia and decided to quit.
As you do.
As you do, yeah. So I guess the only thing that trumped that was going over my dream to go overseas. And fortunately for me, I convinced my now wife to come with me, and that was kind of the timing that made that happen. So 2017, the London dream was well and truly alive, and it was just about when it was going to occur, and we ended up getting married in May of that year, and when I convinced her to kind of share that dream, then we thought, well, let's get married and do it then, so we can start our lives together. As romantically as it sounds, we can start our lives together over in the UK without any of our family and any of our friends, and see what happens. So we moved over in May 2017, and it was.
And you obviously had a job lined up. You had lots of security. You had a place all sorted out. Tell us how that all happened.
Yeah, it's not that easy, especially when you don't know you don't know anyone over there. So I had a few, in terms of work. I had a few contacts that I was able to speak to when I went over there. There was no guarantee of any work, so it was definitely a big risk having quit or resigned from Tennis Australia. So nothing set in stone, no house. I mean, we had a couple of friends that we stayed with when we got there. Thank God for them. So we went on the streets. That was good. And they were just able to help us, kind of set up and find our own place and find work and kind of adapt to living the London life that we're in for. So it I don't know where you want me to go from there, but
tell us how you got a job.
Yeah, well,
and what did you do?
Yeah, well,
was it social media related?
No, it was. So initially, one of the contacts or the leads that I had over there was a content or digital content agency called Livewire Sports, and that was a contact through the Australia Open that I had. So that was good. I went in for an interview there. And they essentially employed me as a freelancer, which was perfect because I didn't know if I wanted to commit to a full-time role at that stage or what my plans were. So a freelancer role, which I quickly found out that in that London market or the UK market, freelancing is very popular, which was good. So I signed on with them. And basically, worked as a freelancer whenever they needed. And so it wasn't a full-time role, obviously. It wasn't full-time hours, but it was enough at the time. And I got
because your wife was working as well.
Yeah, so she ended up finding a job. So she was the security blanket and I was just living the dream. So, just got to work on some really cool events, really cool clients. I had some, global clients being... one of a top agency in their field. So I worked on the F1, the English Premier League, Chelsea Football Club. I did the London Paralympics in 2017, which was a live event. Worked on the Winter Olympics in 2018, I think it was. So some really cool times. And essentially, they were just spinning out, content on those platforms. So whether it was website, blogs, the social channels, did a little bit of like data analytics there as well, which was interesting. But it was cool.
So you spent 2 years in London, but you didn't spend all the 2 years in London because back then you're allowed to travel. You're allowed to cross borders. Tell us about that. So one of the perks of going over to London is it's so close to the rest of the world. For those that don't know, we are currently in Melbourne, Australia, and we are far away from lots of places in the rest of the world. So
That's very true.
Going over to London, the novelty of just being able to jump on a plane and go to Greece or go to Austria or whatever. Talk us through that, and then also tell us about traveling Uggs.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, a lot of I guess a lot of Australians go to London not because of the London experience, but because of the European travel experience, which from Melbourne to a different state is the same amount of time from England to France or Spain or whatever. So the option to travel is amazing. Or the luxury of travel over there is amazing, and if you've got the funds to do it, we obviously worked to spend in London. It was not a saving mission at all. So, and that spend developed into our travel ascendancy, I guess, where we did it into like every kind of 2 to 3 weeks we were finding ourselves going away. So. That was the main reason why we went. My career obviously, took another turn, which I was so blessed for. That was kind of a secondary. But the travel was amazing, and I think we ended up visiting 36 out of 44 European countries while we were there in the space of 2 years. So lots to see. I think.
Do you remember the countries that you just didn't make the list, that didn't make the cut?
No, I don't.
They don't matter. Okay.
No, exactly. It's the 36 that I do remember
Yeah.
that we got to. But it was some of the small ones that we didn't get to. But we still went to some obscure ones like Montenegro and I got up to Russia on a work trip, which was cool. Slovenia, Slovakia, and some of those random, well, not random, but lesser known countries that a lot of Australians wouldn't venture out to when they head overseas. So, and obviously with Europe, like every country is so different. So the culture and the landscape and in terms of the architecture is also different. So nothing's the same over there, and every trip was so different. So yeah.
Yeah. And just talk us through Traveling Uggs. What is Traveling Uggs, and what was the concept behind it, and why did you do it?
Yeah, so Traveling Uggs is my Instagram account. I started it to essentially tell a journal of when we went overseas. Obviously, you see a lot of photo influencers or travel influencers on Instagram, and I thought I could be one of those when I was overseas, considering we were traveling so much. So, it was an easy, obviously Instagram's a free way to showcase your photos. And I decided to set up a specific travel account just to kind of focus on those travel pictures that I was gathering with my camera. So, I think it worked well for what it was. Having been home now for 12 months, it's hard to kind of maintain considering I'm not traveling anymore. But it served its purpose, and hopefully it continues, and we get to go on more traveling adventures soon. So. Did
it lead you to any big brand deals?
I wish, Nathan.
Not yet.
I wish.
Maybe
no.
one day.
Maybe one day. That's not my. I'm not one of those people to say, hopefully I get some free stuff through Instagram. It was more.
But if it comes your way, sure.
Yeah. We'll see we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. But it was more. Like I said, it was a journal for me of showcasing people what we're up to, and I guess having that connection that people back home could see where we were or what places we'd been to. So. And I guess it was a catalyst to my interest in photography as well. If there was something that I knew that people were going to be looking at, it helped or assisted for me to develop more of an interest in photography. So
Speaking of photography, what camera did you use to take all the photos that you were posting on Traveling Args? Was it all one camera, or was it a mix of different cameras? Talk us through how you created that content for that account.
So Johanna, my wife, she bought me a Canon DSLR 750 back a couple of years ago. And I think I say 5 years ago now. Originally, she bought it for work, my work purposes. Not really knowing that an iPhone is also good enough. So,
which we laugh, but it really is these days.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing what these telcos can come up with in terms of their products and the functions that it has. So credit to her. She got me this camera, and that's what I was taking most of my images off, which obviously I got to learn a bit about it and how to use it properly, but I'm definitely no expert in it. But it became a bit of a hobby to try and master it. So that was good, and it obviously it's a good camera. It came up with some good quality images, so I was happy with that. But at the same time, I think there were probably the odd one that I didn't have my camera on me, or it was something I couldn't use it or whatever. That I did get the iPhone out and snapped a pic that way. So.
Yeah, so when you're taking photos with your Canon camera, how did you get your photos from the Canon to Instagram? Talk us through that workflow.
Yeah, so I think one of the main reasons Joe got or picked this camera for me was because of the Wi-Fi function, which was great. It was essentially, you turn on the Wi-Fi through the camera, you sync it up to your phone, and you literally pull the photos straight from the camera onto your phone. So
nice and convenient. That's what we want.
Yeah, that's it. So I think a lot of the cameras at the time that she was looking at didn't have that functionality. And so, one of the main reasons why she picked that one was because of the Wi-Fi, and I was grateful for that.
So moving forward, when we're allowed to travel again one day, I'm sure you're going to go traveling again. Would you reach for the Canon camera, or would you look to upgrade to the latest whiz-bang mirrorless camera, or would you just use your iPhone or whatever phone that you've got in your pocket at the time? Talk us through your thinking behind that.
Like I said, I got to get really interested in terms of what my Canon could do. So I still think it has a purpose, and I still would like to use it. In terms of trying to master it in manual mode and learning aperture and all that sort of thing. So I definitely still think there is a purpose, and I will bring it whenever I do travel. But from a convenience point of view, I don't know if carrying your camera plus your 3 or 4 different lenses plus your filters or whatever is all that. It's not that
practical.
Practical. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So, I mean, it's up to you in terms of.
No, but we're talking about you.
We're talking about me.
What would you do?
Yeah, I think for now my Canon as it is a good, it is a good camera because it kind of does a lot of things that you don't need those extras for. So it's kind of a well-rounded camera. That a beginner like me or whoever could use, and then I use my iPhone for videos, if I'm looking for that. So I guess I'd still use it the same way I used it back there.
Yeah. So your 2 years ran up in London. So for those that don't know, Australians are allowed to go over to London for 2 years on a specific visa. If you're working.
It's called a Tier 5 Youth Advisory Visa, and essentially, you don't need a job to prove that you're worthy of the visa. Anyone can apply if you're under 31, I think the age is. Apply for this visa, and then essentially you've got 2 years to use it how you will. So
time ran out. You got to get out of the UK or whatever and come home. So you've come home. What happened then? Tell us what progressed.
Yeah, well, I guess he skipped a bit in terms of I worked for another agency freelancing called 7 League, which was a digital consulting agency, and they were great. I essentially worked as a freelance for them, but in a full-time capacity, working on some big sporting clients with them. So ideally, if we had more time in London, I would have continued working for them. But like you say, the visa expired and we had to come back. So I basically said to them when I left, I said, I'd love to still work with you guys. Potentially I could be your Australian kind of business development person, garnering clients in this market and working with 7 League from a 7 League perspective still. So they were really interested in that, and that was kind of a kind of a motivator for me to start my own business when I got home. So knowing that was in the background, also knowing that I was coming back to freelancing for Tennis Australia and still utilizing those contacts, which I still am today, and plus a few other contacts, I felt like I could really give this my own business thing a real go, and leveraging my knowledge and experience that I had got overseas, which for me, I feel like that market is about 5 years ahead of the Australian market. So I obviously...
You've got all this insight into the future.
Exactly. So I had a lot of things going for me, and a lot of armory behind me, I felt like. But, for anyone that's starting their own business, like, it's not as easy as it sounds, and especially in the time of a global pandemic, it's definitely not as easy as it sounds. So I kind of just basically decided to do that, and at the start of the year had tennis, had a few other clients that really gained some momentum in terms of this could actually work. Luckily the AFL, I got a position with them on a casual basis, and that was kind of my security blanket when everything else kind of fell apart. So thank God that the AFL came back. But it was I don't know how depressing you want to get, but it was a tough year for anyone to start their own business. But I feel like things from what I saw early on in the year and what it could potentially be, I feel like once this is all done and dusted, something really good could happen. So
talk us through AFL. So for our international audience, AFL is the Australian Football League. It's our Aussie rules game. It's not gridiron.
The best game.
Yep, the best game. It's not gridiron. It's not soccer or anything like that. It's a completely different game. What was your role there, and what were you doing on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
Yeah, whenever my shift was.
Yes.
So I was part of their social media team, which essentially there's 3 full-timers there at the moment at the AFL who work on a day-to-day basis within social media. But then they contract 4 extra casuals who essentially are there for when the full-timers aren't. So obviously weekends, public holidays, that sort of thing, nighttime. Their channels kind of run from a 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. time slot. So obviously the full-timers aren't there the whole time. They have a pool of resources that they can reach out to, which I am one of. And I guess my role there is manning their social media channels. So weekends, for example, it's match day. It's publishing news. It's pushing out video content when matches start. It's engaging with the AFL audience across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. So it's mainly publishing content is probably
not necessarily creating the content, because the content's really just being created for you, and then all right, Joel, you post this out. Do you have much creative control in that, like with the copy, with what you're typing to get people engaged? Talk us through that.
So in terms of the meat of the content, like the video or the editorial, or even the graphic design. That's all been done. The AFL is obviously quite a large organisation, so they have those resources already. And also during matches, we use a live video clipping tool called WSC, which basically the stream is coming through that feed, and then we're just clipping, time clipping whatever moments that we want to share. So. Even though the creative element of the content's already been created, we do have that control of how we want to angle it or what highlights we want to show. So there is definitely still an element of control, and it's up to us to write the copy that goes with that piece of creative content. So there is a creative license there still, but the meat of the content has already been created. So.
And when you're writing that copy, what are you prioritizing? What kind of voice are you trying to write when you're typing it out? Like, talk us through your thinking behind doing a post. So you've just been given a clip and you're like, what is going to be the most engaging way to get people to engage with this content? What would you do?
Obviously it depends what the content is. But the AFL's tone of voice is quite fun. It's quite emotive. The audience, like I said earlier, it's all about speaking to your audience, or knowing your audience, and the AFL audience is quite passionate. They're very one-eyed in terms of who they support and their favourite players and that sort of thing. So you are the governing body of the Australian Football League, so you can't go over the top. You're not a supporter.
You can't be too biased towards Adelaide Crows.
No, my team, the Adelaide Crows. Won't talk about them, but definitely. There's no bias. You are kind of speaking, for the whole entire league. So at the same time, you are being emotive and a bit, up and about in terms of the content to make it more exciting, and to try and give a catalyst to the passion that the fans feel in terms of their engagement towards our content. So, what kind of crosses my mind is essentially your copy needs to marry up with what the content is, and then it's kind of manipulating it in a way that you as a fan, if you would put yourself as a fan, would engage with that content. So,
Great. And just to finish up, or almost finish up, your career right now, where do you see it going and what is the dream? You've already had the dream job and then you went over and had the dream lifestyle in London and now you're back in Australia, which is one of the greatest countries in the world to live in. How can it get any better than that?
This is a tough question, Nathan. No, I have been very fortunate and very lucky to have a career as what I've had so far, and I've hopefully it continues getting better and not just going up from here. So where do I see myself? Well, obviously my own business, Joel Smith Digital, is what I've called myself at this stage. Hopefully that can get some proper momentum behind it, and I've kind of ventured out into sport is my niche and my expertise, but in terms of social and digital, all the principles are all the same no matter what industry you're applying to it. So I ventured out into hospitality, as well as I might be doing some wedding celebrant stuff soon, or even a comedian has got in touch with me. So applying my expertise and knowledge about digital and social media to any industry is kind of what I see myself doing from a business point of view, and hopefully within the next few months I can be saying no to work rather than trying to promote myself on a daily basis to try and get work. So I'm definitely keen to stick it out and see where my own adventures can go in terms of working for someone else on a full-time basis. But we'll see what happens. So
you see a future in social media? It's not just this new trend that popped up in the 2000s and is still here in 2021.
Yeah, no, I definitely see it's sticking around. Yeah, it does change so rapidly, and what you see social media now, it definitely won't be the same in 2 or 3 years' time. So, but in terms of the industry itself, I don't see it going anywhere. I think it's got too much of a what's the word? Purpose in terms of a marketing strategy. I think if you don't have digital or social in your marketing strategy, I think you're really missing out and not understanding the landscape of where it is today. So I think it definitely should be a priority because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. All right. And to finish our video cast today, Joel, if you could give one piece of advice to someone starting out in content creation in regards to social media, what would it be?
If you really, really want something, you'll find a way to get it. Because, I had this dream of being a sports reporter, which now I'm essentially doing, but in a more conventional way, in terms of social media, and not journalism. And, while it took me a few years to get there, I did end up getting it. And that was just through some pathways that I took upon myself and was proactive in and made sure of it. So I think, if you're really passionate about something and you do, have that dream, just don't give up on it because you will find a pathway to get there.
Life finds a way.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Joel, for joining us today on the Your Story Studios videocast. And that is it.